Hello, Betty Croswick here. I want to comment on critical race theory that's being rather pushed into some of the school systems in the United States, but it's seeping into Canada too. And to do this, because it's a subject to be approached with caution, it's full of snake pits and alligators and all kinds of murky, ugly things. But I'm going to throw caution to the winds and talk about it within a framework that I know because I lived the earlier part of my life in Louisiana, in the good old USA. And my very early life was radically influenced by a politician named Huey P. Long. Now, Huey P. Long had never heard of critical race theory, but he had his own version of this, which was what black people and white people needed to come together was jobs. Now, Huey P. Long, he was a country boy. He was born in 1893. Now, that sounds like a very, very long time ago. But he became a politician very early. His parents or his family was what might be called somewhat middle class. Remember that everybody in Louisiana was poor. The vast majority of people who weren't connected with Standard Oil were poor, and both white and black. And but Huey P. Long's parents, his family, were farmers, but they were successful enough that they had enough money to send him to university and law school. And he had some very ideas that were progressive, extremely progressive for the day and the era in which he lived, in which I was born into. Also, he went to law school, and when he got out, he immediately ran for office. He first tried for the governor in 1924, but he was still very young, just out of law school, and nobody had heard of him in the other parishes. Louisiana they don't have their division of their country is its parish divides the counties and that. But anyway, he tried in 1924 and he lost. Nobody had heard of him really, and but even though he lost, he spent the next few years politicking, explaining his ideas to the country and to the people, anybody who would listen in the towns and the cities and the countryside. Now, he believed in equality, a true equality, in the opinion of the Louisianians at the time, and still my opinion, that we need equality. We needed equality in Louisiana at that time. It was dirt poor. It was called the poorest state in the Union, and everybody was wounded and bleeding from poverty and from racial, just racial wounds that people inflicted on a whole bunch of other people, and there was great resentment, and it was pretty bad. It was really bad. And then here comes this young politician who just won a governorship. And he gave his idea, which was the whole problem was one of poverty and misunderstandings, and that to tackle the first problem of poverty, we had to address the fact that the only income producing corporation in Louisiana was Standard Oil. They sucked oil out of Louisiana like it was sitting on, just made out of barrels of oil, and they kept it. They didn't invest in the country. They didn't invest in the people. They were satisfied with the poverty level. It kept any job that was open in Standard Oil as the lowest jobs up to the highest, people scrambling for them. And it was awful. It was awful. And okay, so Huey P. Long, he had a theme. His theme was every man a king, and with a chicken in every pot. Okay, that sounded pretty good to everybody else. And he didn't say anything overtly about women, but we all knew that if there's a pot with the chicken in it, a woman was nearby attended to it, and dividing it up and redividing it, or whatever. And so he spoke of equality. He also spoke of equality between the races, and that was an unheard of thing. And that day, he tried to put it in a very soft language so that it wouldn't inflame the prejudice of poor white men. He got away with it. He convinced the entire white population of Louisiana that the black population also had to have a quality of opportunity, had to have equality to get jobs, had to have the equality to raise themselves up out of being dirt farmers and dirt poor. And he was a big hit with the black people. They followed him all over the country, wherever they went. He went, they went, because no politician had ever paid the slightest attention to them before, because they couldn't vote. No, they didn't have the right to vote then. And furthermore, they were black, and they felt totally bemused by this white politician who included them in his dreams of glory, or however he was describing it at the time. And he was serious. He was a serious politician. And after he became governor the first time, in 1928, that was the year I was born, but his legacy lasted all of my life, because it was so deeply ingrained into my brain of what Huey P. Long actually did. He actually convinced the whole state, or practically the entire state, who wasn't connected directly or indirectly with Standard Oil, that yes, black people should have schools, they should have school buses, the black people should have hospitals, we should have build new hospitals that included awards for them. You have to remember that the South was deeply segregated at this time, and also that black people needed jobs just like white people needed jobs. And so he put everybody to work. He taxed Standard Oil, which had never been done before. He taxed them. And with money enough coming into the government, he could do these things he talked about. So he started building roads, putting roads where they hadn't been before so people could travel around, paving the roads. He put black men in the same work bunch with the white guys, the same ones that were building the hospitals and the schools and just community buildings were white and black. That had never been done before, but he's so captivated that the entire state with his dreams that they went into it with very little prejudice that one might have expected. And he managed to do that. And of course, he was reelected. The next time there was an election, so he served he served 8 years there as governor. And during this time, the Standard Oil people who sucked all of this oil out of Louisiana, but didn't share a drop of it with the people of the country, hated him. Oh, they hated him with a passion. But, and of course, Huey P. Long was aware of this. But he wasn't called the kingfish for nothing, because that was the nickname they gave him. Kingfish were these great big fish in the sea that were edible. Some of them were, and some weren't there in the Gulf. And anyway, they denoted authority. So he was called the kingfish. And he spread his gospel of equality and of taxing corporations that made so very much money and refused to share it with the people, that they hated him and worked against him. But Huey P. Long was very clever. He was a very clever man. Although when his tenure as governorship was over and he couldn't run again for governor, he ran to be a senator. And of course he won overwhelmingly because he was doing so much for the people, even that the other states surrounding Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, a lot of other people who were also suffering. This is in the midst of the greatest depression, the great big depression, that they thought, oh my God, this Huey P. Long, he's a house of fire. And because Huey P. Long could tell a joke, he could tell a story. When he went to Congress, he went to the White House, he continued with his joviality, and he told people in his speeches that he thought the biggest thing wrong with Congress, with the White House, was that they didn't eat enough collard greens. And they didn't even know what pot liquor was, which honestly, without that, how could they live a happy life and know what to do with shrimp and crawdads or crawfish, as they're called in other places, And so he was funny, and a lot of the people in Congress thought, oh, he's just kind of a buffoon. He keeps things the people laughing. He's jolly, but he's no threat. But the smarter ones in Congress knew that Huey P. Long was a threat. He was very much a threat because his people loved him, and even the people in the surrounding states wanted him. And there was chatter in some of the back rooms, and certainly during state legislatures, about Huey P. Long running for president. And of course, the idea of that made Louisianians just sit up and stand up and cheer and rah, 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 rah. However, Huey P. Long was assassinated in 1935. I was 7 years old at that time. It was the end of the world, and in a way, it was the end of the progressive stance that Huey P. Long had injected into everybody in the state and even the surrounding states. So the people that run the things at the very top, the political elites, just as today, said, no, this guy, he's got to go. He can mesmerize people with his dreams of every man a king and with a chicken in every pot, and jobs and new places to live, and black people getting educated, and even white people getting educated. They needed it as much as the black people did, or almost as much. The schools were so poor. And anyway, he was assassinated. I remember my father just so shocked, with his face so drawn. He put us all in the car to drive to Baton Rouge. He felt the need to be near the hospital, near the Capitol ground, the Capitol's, inside the Capitol. Huey was shot, but he died on the steps, I think, as they were taking him away. Anyway, you couldn't get close to the Capitol for the throngs of people. They were mourning and crying and wailing and calling on God to help them now that their savior, Huey P. Long, was gone. He had become almost second to Jesus. And it was a very long and horrific time of mourning, because things immediately went back to where they were before. A lot of the construction stopped. The school buildings stopped and slowed down. The roads, well, they left the roads because they could use them too. But I do believe that the mourning for Huey P. Long certainly did not stop during the time that I was in the South. No, and I was... 5 of my children were born in the capital of Louisiana, Baton Rouge. They were born in Our Lady of the Lake Hospital. And so I was old enough, I was very mature, shall we say, when I left Louisiana with my husband and children to come to Canada. But Huey P. Long resides inside me. His legacy and what I remember of his rallies, his speech, his talk on the radio, and the flesh, and is with me still. The hope he gave to people and the way he softened people's hearts towards each other through raising up black people along with white people towards this dream really of progressive economy and of progressive equality. And the only other, I won't say he was a politician, but the only other, I was not a politician, he's a church leader, who did this same thing to white people and black people's hearts was Martin Luther King. So we have two leaders here that could look into the hearts of both white and black people and bring them together. And so Huey P. Long had the same dream. And it's very woeful and so trying on one's soul that these two men, one white and one black, who shared a dream, were both assassinated. And yet I don't feel that what their dream was has died. I just really don't. And I don't think critical race theory is any answer whatsoever to this. In fact, I think critical race theory is a regression, is that it classifies the entire section of black people as being oppressed by the entire section of white people. And it brings people apart. It pushes them apart. It doesn't bring them together. Dr. King, Huey P. Long, they brought the races together, and they wanted to raise up the entire population so that everybody could progress into the realm of humanity, of being human, and of having human feelings towards each other and not hateful, antagonistic feelings. So I believe that Huey P. Long and Dr. Martin Luther King are with us still. I do. I know they live in my heart. I know none of, probably hardly any of you, if any, have heard of the kingfish, Huey P. Long. But he was just kind of a white version of Dr. King in his dreams. So I think it's fitting that one was white and one was black and could touch the hearts of both white and black people. Okay? Thank you. Bye.